Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Let me turn on my camera. Hi. Welcome to the DevPanel. Okay. Let's be able to see the screen. So, welcome to the DevPanel. We'll be discussing about game design and planning. We have some pre-made questions. We're hoping that you guys will give us a bunch of questions. Not like too many, but like enough so that we can keep the discussion going. I would like to announce that the event may go longer than 5 o'clock, depending on the number of questions we receive. But the more the merrier. So let's begin. So we're going to start off by introducing ourselves so that you guys can get to know who we are. So I'll start off. So you're probably wondering, who on earth am I? I'm WooleyWool. I do programming. I joined Roblox in 2012. I started developing at like around age 10. With like free models. I didn't know how to code at 10. So I do tutorials on the dev forum. I've created the murder mystery tutorial for people to create like a murder mystery type of game, as well as like a smaller one like the real-time lighting, where it takes your real-time clock and sets the lighting accordingly. I'm an event organizer. I do game design as well as programming. I'm planning to host a programming event possibly this month, so keep your eyes peeled. I'm also on the dev forum helping out people with like creating or like helping out with like coding issues that I can like help out with. If you haven't seen me, by the way, you'll see me. Just you wait. To the right, you'll see some of the stuff I've created through the past months. So keep your eyes peeled while I'm working my best. Your mic isn't working. Well, we'll go on to the next person. We'll come back to CJ once he gets his stuff working. All right, next we'll go to hipenguin.
Hello, I've been on Roblox for over 7 years. I'm currently the developer for Ragdoll Simulator 2, and I'm also working on some other projects like Restaurant Rush 2 and Terraphobia. And I also host events, so you'll probably see me again on this platform.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chase. I'm the CTO of Cloud Entertainment, which essentially means my job is to review our workflow as well as do some programming and make sure the tools we're using and the way we're using them is best to suit our workflow. I also perform code review to make sure, everything is solid and nothing's going to break when we put it into the game. Aside from Cloud Entertainment, I make a bunch of tutorials online, although a bunch is probably the wrong way to describe it because I haven't made one in a few months. In terms of user experience, I'm very big on that. I think your first time user experience is extremely important because that's essentially is the gateway for people to start enjoying your game. Also, you should consider that if you've ever had, been confused by software you're using, that's not necessarily your fault. That is the problem with user experience. So making sure your game is intuitive to users and is also very easy to get started with is very important. And so I'm a big proponent of user experience as well.
Alrighty. CJ, you good? Alrighty, go ahead.
Hello, testing 1, 2, 3.
Yep, you're good.
All right. I think I don't know, 2021's off to an interesting start. All right. Yeah, my name's CJ Oyer. I been on Roblox since 2008, making games. You may or may not have heard of me before. I made the Superhero Life games. I was part of this cool little Roblox mini documentary a few months back. I was an accelerator intern in 2017, 2019. I spent some time at Indiana University studying game design, and yeah, it's been great. Yeah, so excited to be here. Excited to be heard.
Alrighty. So what our objective is we want to help you guys, the audience, get a kickstart in game development. One of the hardest things I would say with creating a game is planning your game, just because of all the components that come along with it. So we have a few pre-made questions available, though we are hoping that you guys will give us a few questions in the Q&A. So in order to actually submit a question through the Q&A, you'll see a little Q&A like box towards top of the chat, and you just type in the box, ask your question, and we will help you out. And if there's a question that's really similar to yours, just click the little like button. That'll just help prevent clutter, as well as just making it easier for us to locate a question, so we don't have to find duplicates and possibly discuss them on accident. And also, please be very empathetic towards others. Everyone has different experiences. Some may have done game development like barely, or some may have not even done any. So that's important to keep in mind. So we're going to start off with our first question. We're going to discuss about how how to create your game as well as making it unique. So panelists will be able to have their mics on, and we will begin. Anyone can start there.
Hello. Sorry, I just realized I was so excited about saying hello, I forgot the question. Is it the top one at the Q&A? What is your game mode? Okay. See, staring right in front of me. Okay. Yeah. So my game is, I guess, unique because it really focused on character creation in a time when really, like UGC, that's a nice thing. It was not always there, as many may remember. So for the longest time, there were a lot of limitations on how you could make your character. And obviously, with it being called Superhero Life, it's about superheroes. So, and as you know, they have very stylized costumes, but also you can see some trends. So yeah, in creating that customization system, I actually opened up the door to a whole bunch of role players who really wanted a place to live that superhero fantasy, superhero life, if you will. And yeah, so that was honestly what saved the game. I tried for a while, maybe it was like I was trying to get cooler superpowers in there, bigger map, but at the end of the day, it was the customization system which really elevated the game above the others. All right.
I'll talk about the game I'm working on right now. So some of you know that I'm actually working on a murder mystery game. I am trying to make it so that it's different from all the other ones. Like there are some similar elements, like there's a murderer, there's a sheriff, there's innocent people, but I don't want to make it the typical, oh, it's just a normal murder mystery game. No, I want to spice it up and try to make it so that I can't really say much about it right now just because it's not completely done, though it's really close to being done. But I'm trying to make it so that there are different things that, whether you're innocent or a murderer or a sheriff, I want it so that you guys have different things to do during different rounds. Like one round, I'm going to say one thing. Like one of the rounds, it's there's different effects that happen during the round. It'll take the idea of the normal event or normal round, but I try to make it so that there's different things that are happening. So one example is that your controls are completely inverted, or your camera's completely flipped. This will try to make it so that it's harder on the murderer to get you because it just happened, but at the same time, it makes it a little harder on the innocent or sheriff. So I need to make sure that everything is balanced, but as well as it's fun. So.
I guess I can go. I'm creating Restaurant Rush 2, which is a chaotic co-op cooking game, and I'm essentially taking an existing kind of idea and putting my own spin on it by adding like all new mechanics never seen before, like throwing and kind of moving platforms and all this like chaotic things within the kitchen. And I think it'll be really fun to kind of play in that arcade format. And essentially it's taking, all right, you start with this idea, but then you put your own kind of ideas, like you just go wild with it.
Awesome. And what about you, Chase?
All right, so I'm working on Fishing Simulator under Cloud Entertainment, and we're actually rebranding to Fishing Frontier shortly. And you know, when you think of like a simulator game, you oftentimes think like, oh, it's like 100 other simulator games. And you know, to some extent, it is like that because at its core, it's just clicking, waiting for a fish to bite, and spam clicking some more to catch the fish. However, I think what makes our game stand out is the depth to which we take that concept with all kinds of things like you've got multiple worlds to explore, you have tons of quests to complete, and there are like fish bosses you can fight, and there are, you know, tons of ways to upgrade all your equipment and boats and that kind of thing. And you know, it's all kind of covered with a great aesthetic as well. So I think honestly what makes Fishing Frontier stand out is just the level to which we take basic concepts.
Awesome. So on to our next pre-made question. The question is, what qualifies as success on this platform? Who wants to start off?
Just do left to right. Just
Left to
keep
right?
things simple. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, or right to left. I mean, I'm also fine with going left. Just thought it might keep things a little bit easy.
All right, then I can go first.
It is worth noting that the order is different for different people.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, then we'll go
alphabetically.
Okay, then we will go with Chase. Because yeah, you start with a CH and then CJ starts with CJ. So.
Well, my name's Chris.
So. So I think this question kind of depends on who you are and what your position is. So your accountant would say success is turning a profit, but you know, we all know that's not necessarily at the core of it, because you know, someone who does marketing is going to say, well, you have to hit a certain number of players, as opposed to just like getting 1 Robux and we didn't spend anything, so that's a profit. But honestly, I feel like success on Roblox is just really meeting whatever your goals are, as much as of a cop-out as it is. Because you know, a lot of people most of the time just want people to play their games and to be able to use the people playing their games to continue to work on that game through revenue. So I think you know, success is probably depends on what you're looking to get out of game development. But personally, I think success is having a stable player base that pays for you to continue working on what drives you forward.
Nice. All right, CJ, you are next.
Yeah. So I guess how I've always viewed success in terms of my own personal thing is like just whatever allows me to just keep on going, keep on making games. Because if I go bankrupt and have to get a real job, not that this one isn't hard work, but it's not obviously not going to be as fun. Whatever allows me to keep doing that, whatever allows me to get up every day and be excited to work on my project. And so it's not just earning money. It's also like if you're earning money but doing it in a way which is the most boring thing to develop, or you're just miserable with it every day, then that's not good. You want to do it in a way which also keeps you content with this, because you're going to be doing it for a long time, hopefully. And yeah, so I guess that's how I've been viewing it. And that means that sometimes I'll go a more business-minded route, but then sometimes I'll take longer on a task to make it fun, to make it interesting, to like not go the well-paved route and try something new. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this is obviously going to be a very subjective answer, but yeah.
I think it really depends on you and what you define. And like most people, like Chip said, they might just want people to play their game. Like if you're just starting out, that's probably one of your goals too. And then maybe once you have that, maybe you might redefine your kind of success. And then you might move on to like amount of players playing your game or like kind of revenue. And then yeah, like CJ said, it's what keeps you going for that success.
For me, in my case, I don't like what I qualify as success is being able to create something. It may flop, but I feel that if I were to be able to create something that is fun, learn along the way, as well as getting to know other people and learn how they learned how to do uh, different things. Like for instance, with programming, I'm still learning to this day. Like there's stuff that I don't know, though I'm willing to learn it. I am trying to make it so that like the game is interesting as well as being playable. Though I'll do my best to get it to like become known, because I don't want to create something just for creating it. Um, but that's what I really qualify as success. If I can be able to create something, though it may not be as a big like game, though it's like I learned along the way, then I would consider that as success in my personal opinion. So on to our next question, which is, what is a good way to get your game visits higher?
Make a bunch of alt accounts.
So I feel like this isn't necessarily the question you probably want the answer to. Because if you have a billion visits, but these people only click join and then leave, that's not really what you want, because you're not getting an active player base from that. So what I would, the question I'll make up and then answer would be, what's a good way to get your active players faster? Because that is not only going to make your game rise up in search results and make it appear like in the friends played section. Like that's like my favorite section on Roblox, to be honest. But it's also going to make your game seem more lively when you're in a server with a lot of players. So honestly, the best way to keep your player count up is to make sure they're staying as long as possible. So come up with engaging mechanics and put come up with a unique spin to put on players staying in your game for a long time. So yeah, that's called your retention. So keeping your retention high is how you make sure the players that do come to your game stay there for longer. And then there's also your first time user experience. You want the first time the player plays to be great, so they're willing to keep coming back and keep sustaining that active player count and also sustaining your visit count. That's all.
So if I understand my alphabet correctly, I go next, correct?
Yep.
All right.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. And I mean, like, they're completely right. Yeah. Like user retention and all that stuff is the best way to get your place visits and concurrent numbers and all those important metrics up, because you can burn as much money as you want on advertisements and you'll get those first time plays. Advertisements will get you your first time plays. And that's what I love about it, because that means anyone with like $5 in their pocket can technically make a game that does really well, because if you can get people to keep coming back, like you'll just keep growing that numbers. And if you've monetized it correctly, you'll be able to afford more ads, and it becomes this cycle. You start accelerating, and so like that's the thing. It's always going to be about retention, because if people leave and then never come back, well, at some point, like even to a point of comedy, you will run out of people to play your game. Like whether it be everyone on the planet has just been like, that game's not for me, or just you run out of money, which is probably the more likely situation. But so focus on retention. There are a lot of ways to do that, a lot of ways to help improve that, which I'm sure we'll be talking about even more today. But just investing in progression loops, and as well as making sure that the core of your game is fun, because even if you have a great progression system, if your game is boring, no one's coming back. No one's going to sign up for your like restaurant rewards program if they don't like the food. So definitely a lot of interesting game design theory and practices you can look into for that.
you do kind of need to have that balance between, all right, you have this engaging progression loop, and then you also have this wave to get new players to get into that loop and keep coming back. And like the others have said, it's a lot about player retention and making sure new players getting to that loop, and also making sure the loop is engaging for the players to come back.
Agreed. Of course, advertising is going to help you a ton. I highly suggest that you try to use the sponsored advertising like method, just because it'll help get your game like within like the game's list. Another thing that you should also consider is when you create your game, you need to make sure that actually like after a certain point that the game updates, so it's not just the same game, because players are going to get bored after a bit playing like the same game. So if you can update your game to make it so that there's new mechanics, new things to collect, new places to explore, depending on whatever your game genre or idea is, adding that idea of updating your game to add more content will keep those veteran players coming back, as well as bringing in newer players, which will help keep the retention higher.
One interesting point CJ brought up in his article, I believe, is that like although updates are good to keep veteran players, it shouldn't be kind of like what's sustaining your play, because your players should be coming back for kind of the core loop and not necessarily just new content that's added on top of your core loop.
My favorite example is, when's chess getting its next update? Like a good systemic game can generate content indefinitely. Like Natural Disaster Survival is probably one of the best examples on the site of just like a solid procedural experience generator that doesn't really need many updates and still outperforms a ton of games. But yeah, I think that's I yield to the floor.
Absolutely. So on to our next question. So our next question is, what are the key touch points for improving user experience? I know Chase is gonna love this one.
Oh yeah. I think I've already harped on first time experience enough, so I'll keep this brief. You want to launch them into the action. Don't have, your studio logo and then a menu and then a character customizer and then a map selector, that kind of thing. I'm kind of prototyping my own personal projects, and I want to literally make it so from the moment you click play, you don't have to do anything, and it just launches you into the first round. And you also want to make things, this is just more general design stuff, not necessarily first time stuff. You want to reduce friction. So that applies to things like menus. If you want someone to buy credits in your game, you don't want to make it so they have to go through a bunch of sub menus to finally make the transaction. You want to have, a buy credits button, and then you click the amount of credits they want, and it brings up the Roblox prompts to buy. So that makes it fast, that makes it simple, and they know what they're doing. So making things clear and intuitive is great for just preventing them from feeling lost. So you don't want, a million different buttons on one panel or just like an infinite scrolling list. Then I would say, in terms of actual gameplay, you could specifically try and figure out which parts of, like, just play the game yourself or ask other people, figure out which parts of the gameplay, because in that core loop, figure out which parts are boring or which parts just aren't as interesting as the others, and try and find ways to make them interesting. So you think of a game like Roblox Titanic. It's if you play to win, like survive to the end, it's really boring because you just like you just try and get into a life thing as soon as possible. But what they do to make it interesting is they give you risk points. And so the closer you get to the water, the more points you gain. And so that actually encourages people to take risks and, get closer to dying, and therefore have to, actually experience the game, which is trying to save yourself. So players will try to optimize the fun out of everything and just come up with the best way to farm points, but adding in little fun mechanics like that is, I think, a great way to improve user experience. This makes the game more fun.
Absolutely.
Hello. So I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics now, which is cognitive biases. So I'm going to be posting a link in the chat of a very helpful tool. It's called the Cognitive Bias Codex. I'll let me share my screen. Can I do that? Do I have that power?
You should.
Someone should tell that to Bevy. Okay. Well, anyway, you guys can pull it open. Basically, as was just touched on, a lot of player limitations in terms of like what they can think about at one time. In fact, how many numbers can you think about in one moment? About 7 or 8? Like, that's not a whole lot of information. It's like half a cell phone number. Well, not half, but point is, players, they cannot think about a whole lot at the same time. They gotta. You've heard of muscle memory? That's actually how a lot of stuff works. You just form these habits in your head that your brain uses as shortcut, so it doesn't gotta think about as much stuff. And basically, forming those habits, you gotta go slow. You gotta make sure you don't overwhelm the player, because the second they're overwhelmed, they're gonna panic and they might even leave. And that'll just confuse them. And no one plays a game because they want to feel confused. They want to feel smart, but oftentimes in order to feel smart, you have to have the risk of confusion. But the goal is never to have them feel confused. And so with that, you want if you look at the kind of things that players are really good at, such as I just talked about too much information, but also not enough meaning. There'll be instances where obviously they need extra direction to figure out what to do with a system. One example that always comes to my head is in Jailbreak. When you first leave a cell, there are literally arrows on the floor pointing you where to go. That's some great environmental design, which is help people figure out how to escape. Let's see, and so that kind of stuff. Read all about that stuff. If you're interested in books about it, I have books to recommend. But that kind of stuff, plus using analytics to check your progress, are very helpful for onboarding.
One of the questions people are asking is, I see one of the first experience problems with my game is a wordy tutorial. What can developers do to effectively educate the player on the core loop without overloading the player? The tutorial is sometimes it's a pretty big part of introducing new players, but you really have to find that balance of, all right, you're not going to write a huge wordy tutorial. I think the best kind of tutorial is having the player learn through experience, but you also have to make it explained well in a way that new players will be able to understand the complex mechanics. But you essentially use that to introduce players to the core loop, and you have to do it in a way that's engaging.
So to add to what Chase said about making it very simple for the player, you want to make it so that if you were to buy something, for instance, you need to make it to the point. You shouldn't make it so that it's really complex to buy this item. That might make it a little secure just to prevent little kids, but at the same time, no, you don't want to do that. To add what Hypen also said with tutorials, what I try to do with planning out some of the tutorials is to make it so that the player is going to probably for instance with the murder mystery game, I'm probably going to make it just a little simulation of a murder mystery round. I'm going to put the player in there. I'm going to have them just do the certain tasks within that tutorial to complete it, but try to make it so it's not wordy and it's more on the player to complete this tutorial before actually playing the real game. What I do for improving user experience is whenever I'm creating something and I need to test it, I try to make sure that it actually is playable on mobile, because if you didn't know, a lot of people play on mobile with some of the devices instead of PC. So what I try to do is I try to make it so that it's playable, as well as making it so that if there is something that needs to be changed, depending on what device you're playing, I need to add that in. So that user experience is really important in order to keep your players engaged and staying in your game and coming back.
One final note on tutorials. I feel we've kind of come to, think of a tutorial as something that comes before the game that you have to do before you can start the game. But in reality, I think the tutorial shouldn't come before the game. The game should be the tutorial. So just trying to make things, like as intuitive as possible is really the best kind of tutorial there is, because, the player doesn't even need to, sit and, read through explanations and stuff. Like I started playing Spyro Reignited, and I, never heard about the games before. And they don't tell you need to go collect dragons. What they do is they spawn you in front, like right in front of a dragon. And so as soon as you press the forward key, you run into the dragon and save them. And that, sets you on your quest. And so it doesn't even tell you what to do, but you just literally stumble into it and you instantly make that connection of, oh, I did the thing and I need to keep doing that thing. So that's all.
Yeah, and I guess just one final sentence out on that. If you're looking for great ways to do exactly what they were talking about and teach the player mechanics through just experience and not a tutorial, platformers, from what I can tell, are consistently amazing at this. Like, you'll see them add new areas to the stage. You'll see them add new mechanics that you got to consider. But they always start out with a very simple level and just build on that. So I think if you're trying to figure out what's a good implementation of this, like, most platformer games do this really well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this works really well with people who are actually like maybe like there's this group of people that are like, when they join a game, they instantly leave when they see a tutorial. They completely just don't want to deal with that. And I think learning through experience is a really good way of appealing to that audience as well.
And also making it optional for the player to do the tutorial might help reduce that issue. Though if they do skip the tutorial, it may make them a little bit more confused. So it really depends on who is playing and what they want to do. So let's go on to the next question. So we did talk about this a little bit earlier, which is how can I keep the players engaged in the game and willing to return? I don't know if you guys really want to continue discussing about that.
Could add a little something. So kind of I want to focus in on the second part of willing to return. Kind of the default way we think of getting people to return to the game is daily rewards. You want people to come back, so you make it so if they come back, they literally get a direct reward. However, that isn't all that fun, because they could just join, collect their reward, and leave, and just like come day after day after day and just farm points that way. So in my opinion, players come back to experience something new and interesting. So they'll play the game until they're bored of it, because there's nothing new to do. So what you should do is either make your game complex enough and broad enough that they are very unlikely to run out of things to do. So you think of a game like Adopt Me. Adopt Me is huge because it focuses so much on the social aspect, where there's essentially infinite things to experience, because you're always playing with new people who are coming up with new things to do. And another thing you can do is updates. Updates are the same thing, where you're giving players something new. So a lot of people who were maybe bored of the game come back to the game to see what's new. So just trying to make sure that there are always things to do that the player hasn't done yet is a good way to keep them returning.
And just once again, hyping up systemic gameplay. Like the game doesn't have to get old if the game is new every time. If you have a new situation, because basically it makes the content for you. And on top of that, it's definitely true. Social games do very well on Roblox. It's also worth appreciating that that's not just because you're playing with new people, but also because you're returning with old people. I know for the longest time, MMORPGs like World of Warcraft, like stuff like clans and guilds and all that stuff, those are high motivators for returning every day, because your group was doing something. You didn't want to be left behind. You wanted to hang out with your friends. And so engaging in those sort of like social structures to allow people to have fun together as consistently as possible, as well as reducing the initial friction to finding friends in a game. Those can help a ton for getting people to want to come back and hang out. Yeah.
Shoot, I just blanked out. So wait, Wooly, do you want to go first?
I was like, what I was gonna say was like with the ideas that Chase brought up with like daily rewards. I was planning to add in something like that just so that there's some incentive to come back to the game and just like instead of just playing it once and leaving. That's one way to bring them in. I may add in like different things to do when playing the games, but like I would say like one of the most important things in order to keep people engaged and willing to return is like if you can provide updates, whether they're mini or big, that would help get a lot of veteran players willing to come back and wanting to replay your game.
So actually that reminds me. So we've mentioned daily rewards, but I think a much better implementation of this is like if you have daily challenges where they have to complete a task in order before they can get their daily reward. Now, games implement this in different ways. Like, for example, Outlaster, the sequel to Survivor, has you play a full round before you get your daily reward, or maybe get like 5 points or something like that. And then one question I'm seeing is what systems can developers add to their games to evolve the core loop as players gain skill or further progress? And I think a good way is like kind of unlocking new content as you're progressing. Like first you're only introducing like a part of the core loop, and then as you progress you're unlocking like a whole new section of the game. And I think that works really well in keeping players to return. And I think one example of this is Visteria. Once you reach level 10, you unlock 3 different classes that you can specialize into, and that kind of unlocks a whole new part of the game. And one important point is that one way you can implement this core loop is if the core loop itself is interesting and keeps player coming back, the updates will kind of be a bonus on top of that, and that would be ideal for your game.
Absolutely. Alrighty, we're gonna go on to the next question. So our next question is, why did you choose Roblox over other programs to develop on?
Well, this is an easy one for me. It was my intro to game development. A 10-year-old Chase got told about Roblox, and I started playing the games, and heard inklings of being able to make my own games. I found the edit button, and that just kind of set me on the path of making my own games. And yeah, I've grown up on this platform, and so while I could probably switch away to a different platform, it's just there's a whole lot of stuff I'd have to relearn. And while I do dabble in that stuff, for now, Roblox is where I'm most comfortable. It's also got its own perks. Honestly, probably the biggest perk is the server management. People kind of take for granted how easy it is to make a multiplayer game because Roblox just handles all that for you. But like we moved all of our player data for Fishing Frontier to a third-party service, and like we literally have 2 people whose full-time job it is to manage all the server infrastructure through AWS. So Roblox managing that is like a huge thing to have for free. So don't before you try and make a multiplayer game off platform, consider that it's going to be really difficult.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually have made prototypes of games. I never actually have released a game in Unity, but I've made games in Unity, Godot, even set dressing in Unreal, just a little scene, kind of like a showcase. And it takes a lot longer than it would just. It's not just that it's a new tool. Like by the time I was finished with Unity, like I could probably make something in Unity about as quickly as Roblox. But the thing is, it's about like what, where you want to spend your time, because if it came down to coding a custom physics system for like some weird space game or something in Roblox versus Unity, it's going to take the same amount of time. But the problem is in Unity, you also have to obviously set up, what was it? Like for one, you have to learn a whole new language if you don't already know any of the C derivatives. But with that, it also uses a completely different structure than what you may be familiar to. It's a lot more. Imagine if like most of your game was just done in the render stepped loop, because that's how Unity games handle stuff on more of a frame by frame basis. And there's definitely best to be gained, but once again, the costs of it are probably the biggest reason Roblox is such an amazing option, because I guess so. Also, obviously, the server stuff, that's a pain. That's going to be a pain. But one thing which is honestly probably more terrifying to me is the actual implications of hosting a multiplayer area. Like, what happens if someone goes in there and starts being vulgar? What happens if someone goes in there and like actually harms people? Like in terms of like gets harmful information. Like, what happens if there's a kid in your game? Like all that stuff that is not just technically difficult, but ethically difficult. Like, you have to your burden is a lot higher for what could have just been done on Roblox and let a team of people whose full-time job it is to handle that stuff figure it out. Like, it's a massive burden. And frankly, I think what Roblox allows best is it allows you to just focus on the game. Focus on making it fun. You can. People already have avatars. There's already a physics system. There's already rendering, and it's constantly getting updated. There's a community. All this stuff is provided for you because at the end of the day, they want you to be a game designer. They want you to make the fun experience that people can enjoy, and you don't have to be burdened with all the technical debt that comes with building your own infrastructure from the ground up. So yeah, I think that's the reason which I think Roblox is a great option for even indie developers, because like I like Unity. I just it's a lot bigger. You're taking a lot bigger bite of that, and I'm just not sure it's worth it. So.
Right, I agree. Roblox really, like, they handle a lot of the backend and like kind of like infrastructure for getting your game to actually like work and for players to actually be able to handle all the servers. And I think one big reason why I'm on Roblox is because of the vast community that's already here. Like, you have not just the players, but you also have this huge developer community, and Roblox kind of works directly with them and to like get feedback on like what kind of features they would like to see for as like development tools. And I think that's one big plus that Roblox has in its community.
Absolutely. I tried Unity. Unity and I are not really good friends. I prefer Roblox just because like a lot of the stuff is taken care of, such as like as mentioned before, the server, the filtering, etc. And I feel that with that stuff, on top of the stuff I'm going to be creating, of course, I just feel that it would be a lot more sustainable, and it's just a lot easier for me to create the stuff. And like they have like set up a ton of the code, like the player movement, the chat filtering, etc., which is really handy. Unlike with like Unity and some of the other game engines that are out there, I felt that was really hard to use it just because like there's so many things that you can do. But with like Roblox, they take those things that you can do, but they try to make it so it's understandable, as well as some of it is just removed because it's already built in, which is why I choose Roblox over other programs.
It is worth noting we're not necessarily trying to dissuade you guys from using other engines, because they have their own perks that you should totally look into. I know like Unreal Engine has no licensing fees up to $1 million, which is nuts. So we just personally for multiplayer games, Roblox makes more sense for us. But if you want to create like a single player experience and you want to focus on the atmosphere of it, then something like Unreal Engine or Unity might make more sense for that kind of project.
Absolutely. Right.
One question I see in the chat is, how did you get into Roblox, and do you ever plan on making standalone games outside of Roblox? I personally have mostly been on Roblox, and I got into dev work simply because I thought, wow, one day I just realized, wait, all these games are created by like people like me, and then so I just started learning how to create my own experiences on Roblox. And I think a great place to start is the developer wiki and just seeing how to get started. And they have really good tutorials for that as well.
Absolutely. I know, like, when I first was introduced with Roblox, I was at like a public place, and they were like, "Hey, did you see Roblox?" And I'm like, natural disasters like was my first thing that I saw. Then what I heard was, "Oh, Roblox didn't create this; a person created it." And I thought it was really cool that like people like us and others are able to create their own stuff rather than having just one company create the game, allow people to play, repeat. So I thought it was really cool that anyone can create a game, take their ideas, and then just create it. So, all right, let's go on to the next question. The next question is, any advice as to where to start in learning Roblox development skills?
Ooh, where to learn? Start by watching all of my videos. No, I'm kidding. So I learned from Code Theorem tutorials. That guy's awesome. I think he's actually working at Roblox now. However, those tutorials were made in like 2012, 2013. So those aren't applicable anymore because they used an entirely different version of Roblox Studio. I've heard good things about Alvin blocks. I've talked to the guy. He seems really smart. So I would check out his tutorials because they seem pretty good at breaking things down into their elements and then explaining how to accomplish those elements. So once you've kind of finished following like an intro series of some kind, I would suggest come up with something simple that you want to make that you think would be cool, and then just look up how to do that. And because learning is essentially split into two portions, there's learning the syntax, which is learning the language itself, and then there's learning the API. So that's learning all of the tools that Roblox provides to you to use through that syntax. So you learn the language, and then you learn all of the different services and properties and functions that come with Roblox. So I think that's pretty much the best way to learn.
Yeah, and also on top of that, I'd recommend even if you have the option, if your school offers like a programming class or anything, or are willing to take an online class, a genuine programming class in literally any language, like maybe not HTML, but Java was one that helped. Any variant of C, any Python is pretty similar to Lua. The point is learning a single language to a point where you can just write something from like you have a goal and you can write something to reach that goal. Once you've achieved that in any language, that ability will transfer to other languages. Like, I'm not saying there will be no learning curve, but just the initial step of figuring out how to program is honestly the most difficult one. But the differences between languages are fairly minor, short of obvious word differences. I'd say it only took since I had worked with Lua for so long, moving over and working with C#, C++, in my own game programming class, which I took at Indiana University, I was able to have my game done week 2 while they were still teaching stuff. Not because I'd ever used the language which they used in that class, which was it was a variant of Python used for Godot. But point is, just learn any coding language, because odds are you're not going to find a Lua coding language near you, not a Lua coding class. That's not a very widely used language beyond some very specific computer graphics stuff, and obviously Roblox. But yeah, so just learn how to program. That's my number one recommendation. Also, it helps a lot with getting employed elsewhere if need be.
All right. So for advice that I would give is start small, of course. You don't want to dive in deep. Like you might have this really crazy idea that's like, oh my God, I got to do this. No one has done it. But you won't be able to really create it unless you get a really good understanding of how Roblox works. So of course, as mentioned before, you can use the developer wiki. You can get like an understanding of how Roblox works, how to actually code some of the stuff, as well as building. Building is really important to know as well. But another thing that you can use is there's this thing called the developer forum where like there will be people that'll have questions that like with their code or whatever they're building or art, and there are other people who understand a little or a lot more than what you do, and they'll be there to help you and help you guide through your issue, as well as essentially giving you a solution to fix your issue. I know for a fact that I use this a lot. I use this for like trying to find different ways how to like run this code, as well as learning how to do something that I just don't know. So that's a really good place to start as well. I've used Alvin blocks when I first started programming. Like I remember when his Piggy series was created, I looked through that and I learned so much. I got to learn how to set up a pretty much just a round-based game. And from there, I was able to create my own game, as well as taking some of the ideas that he's taken and trying to implement it into my own game, as well as trying to make it so that it's like the performance of the game runs smoothly, because there are some stuff that he doesn't mention that you'll have to do some research on in order to make your game fully playable.
Yeah, I think the best, most straightforward resources are Roblox wiki and also going to those tutorials. Yeah, I've already mentioned those.
Absolutely. And now our next question is, what advice would you give to developers struggling with motivation?
That is an excellent question, and my notes are kind of jumbled on this one, but I'll try to make it coherent. So I feel like there are different kinds of struggling with motivation. The ones I have written down here are bored, frustrated, and uninspired. So bored is just kind of you aren't really interested in the project anymore, and in my opinion, the simplest solution is just either switch to a part of the game that you are more interested in working on, or slightly adjust the game to, incorporate something that you've, recently become more interested in. Or if you're doing it solo, this is kind of terrible to say, but switch to a completely different project for a little while. Now, I know that in a lot of situations, I mean, a lot of you probably move on to a different project and then never come back to the unfinished one. I've done that near 400 times, I think. And I think my secret to coming back to an abandoned project and picking up where you left off is to force yourself to work on it for, about an hour or so, and try and work on something that is guaranteed to give you results, because this kind of connects to the point of being frustrated. If you're like hitting your head against a wall on a specific part of your game and it's just driving you nuts that you can't get it to work, just switch shortly to some other part of the game that you can get done relatively quickly, because a lot of time not seeing any progress really becomes frustrating. And when I know that I personally, when I do this trick of just making it so something clicks, even if it's a simple thing, it really just kind of remotivates me, because I know I can do it because I just saw myself progress. And so that works with returning to an abandoned project as well. And finally, you could just be uninspired. And in my opinion, the best thing to do here is to, kind of look at other projects, come up with something that you like, something that kind of interests you. There's always, something I'm looking at that, like I'm like, ooh, that would be fun to implement it in my game. And so just maybe kind of pivot the design of your game a little bit to factor in that that thing that inspires you. So yeah.
Yeah, and everything he said is correct. Yeah, we've all we've all had projects where it's just miserable, and you need that. Sometimes jumping to another ship is definitely sometimes what you got to do. But honestly, one thing that I found that has, because I've gotten to a point where there are a lot of people who are like, "Hey, I'm excited about this game. When's it coming out?" And well, it gets increasingly painful to tell them coming out. Don't you know I just make development gifts for a living? Don't you? No. Yeah. So it's obviously you got to release your games. Like that's the way you grow, really. Like you sure you can grow in making them, but that'll just make you technically capable. That won't make you a good game designer. You need to have people play your games. And the way to do that is to release them in some form. They don't got to be a big staking your entire reputation on this game, like magnum opus type thing. They can just be, hey, I made this in a weekend. Try it out. And you can learn from that. And but this is about motivation. And at the end of the day, sometimes I'll just take like a day off. It doesn't happen too often. In fact, I've had more situations where I've said, I'm going to take a day off and then end up working anyway. But even like just a spontaneous, like anyone who's ever been had like a day off of school spontaneously, either from being sick or whatever, they'll recognize that like they'll at the end of the day, you'll just be like, okay, I feel better. Even if you're feeling physically worse, you'll like the strain of school kind of dissipates a bit. And it's the same with the work. Like you get a day off, allows you to recharge. Because a lot of time when I'm seeing people struggling with motivation, the most time that I see it is when they've been stuck in a project for too long, thinking about too much, and it's just running them dry. So definitely days off. I recommend those. Obviously, don't go crazy with it. If you're taking 6 out of your 7 days a week off, I doubt that that's gonna be good news for your game. But like every month or so, taking a day off is not gonna end the world, and it's probably gonna help you a ton. I know it's helped me a ton.
Yeah, I think some good points are like switching to different projects, or maybe you could try changing up your plan a little bit and just going a new direction with your game, and that could give you maybe a spark for a new game idea. But yeah.
Yeah, for me, when it's like school time, I usually take I don't really do much coding during the weekdays, though I do construct ideas of what I want to code during the weekend. Like I'll have like a list and I'm like ready, and then I'll become a programming holic on that weekend. But like I know that I have gone through like motivation struggles. I'm like, oh, I don't really want to work on this. And then I'll just probably like scrap it. Though one of the things I do is if I were to work on a different game, I will take some of those ideas I did implement into my old game, and then probably add them to my new game, just so that I didn't like completely like scrap it. One thing I do want to know is that if you are losing motivation or you're just not into the game anymore, and you are, for example, like coding it, it's not going to end up too well, just because like you're not going to put that much love that you had originally with it. So it's kind of, I'm going to have to be real blunt with this, as like others have been, but you might have to move on from it. But sometimes you may want to come back to it, and you might have all that motivation spurred back at you. So, alrighty. So now we are going to go into Q&A mode. We are going to look through the questions. Oh boy, I have not looked at them, but I see a red dot right next to it. So it means that there is a bunch of questions, hopefully. So let me look for one that we can discuss. Okay, let's start from the top.
Mentioning these aren't sorted in order of votes. So
yeah.
I thought
I'm starting from the top. Whoever spoke first, and I'll just scroll down and find something we haven't really talked about.
Sounds good. It looks like there aren't too many.
Yeah.
Good.
So I think we can start with Yellow Banana 898's question, which is how to come up with an original game idea and stick to it. I think that would be a good one. So if Chase wants to go first.
So I think stick to it has already been kind of thoroughly discussed with the last question. So in terms of coming up with an original game idea, you've probably heard this before, but there really are no original ideas. What there are extremely complex remixes of other ideas. You know, you think of a random game. Someone give me a random game.
Piggy.
And I have not played it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's go with Piggy. If it is what I think it is, it's you're basically trying to stay away from the pig, right? And the pig is like, it's a horror game. Okay. So that's just like a combination of, you've got the something ominous is coming after you aspect from Slender. You're in a dark environment, which is just from every horror movie ever. And what makes the game different is that it also takes a character design from a children's cartoon and kind of like twists that in a weird way. And so what makes that game unique is its presentation, really. So an original idea is just a ton of other ideas combined together. And the more ideas you combine together, the harder it is to pinpoint the inspiration back to a singular point, which leads your idea to being considered more original. So in terms of coming up with an original idea, is just absorb all the things and try to come up with unique ways to combine them together. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's there's definitely something they said that nothing truly original exists anymore. But honestly, you could probably get a random number generator that gave you you're the first person to witness this 40-digit number. But that doesn't mean it's compelling. So like there's something to be said that player motivation is a fairly consistent thing. So to an extent, there will be there will be these commonalities. Like I know in movies they talk a lot about the hero's journey, this structure which people just seem to love. Like it's emerged organically from unrelated cultures across the planet because people just love that story. They love the humble origins of the hero, the trials they go through, facing the bad guy, thinking they're going to lose it all for a second, then coming back even stronger, and happy ending, walking off into the sunset. That's a very compelling story, and it like plays off a ton of cognitive stuff that has helped people survive over the time, like overcoming struggle. People who overcome struggle tend to continue on existing, and that thus were composed of their ancestors. And same thing with obviously getting along with people, doing honorable things. All that stuff is stuff that's kind of rewarded in society continuing to exist. And that's a whole other. I could talk for hours about that. But the point is, player motivation is going to be player motivation. It's going to be consistent. It's going to be there's going to be people on different parts of the spectrum, but it will be a spectrum you can pretty consistently map out. Right? I had a whole talk on it, which you guys can watch if you want. It's linked in my Twitter. But the point is, basically just find a way to scratch that itch. Your game doesn't have to be unique to be compelling. Like unique helps. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't try to be the same. Don't try to rip someone off. But like imagine if like Fortnite never came out because like people are just gonna think it's PUBG. No one's gonna like us. Like no, they loved it. Like yeah, there's the building mechanic, but I'd say that when I played it, I didn't really play it too differently, but that doesn't mean you don't want variety. In a sense, that's kind of what free market is. It's multiple people offering a similar service, and then hopefully the best one rising to the top. Like it's like unique selling points help, but don't make your game unique to its detriment. Don't be like, oh yeah, I have a horror game, but everyone has a fake mustache. Like that doesn't necessarily add to the game. Like unique is not necessarily good. So I'd rather just try to make a good game. and you can add unique things. You can build it out. You can there's so many games that start off as mods of others, and because they were literally modifications. And you can start in a similar place to someone else, but make it your own. Make it like, if you're not trying to copy them, your game will be different. Like, just focus on what makes it fun and going there, getting the most out of that. And that's basically what I've been trying to do. And so far it's worked out for me. So, yeah.
I think another thing you can try is, we've already talked about kind of building off of pre-existing ideas, but now perhaps you could think about what kind of game you want to see. Like, you've played all these Roblox games, but like, what's something that you want to see that hasn't been done before, or has been done before, and you could put your own spin on it? And I think if you go that route and just build your game the way you want to see it, the way you want players to be able to experience it, and I think you'll go pretty far with that.
Yeah, like for me, when I was creating my murder mystery game, I took the idea of murder mystery, the general idea, there's a murderer, sheriff, innocent, and I took that idea. But what I did was I wanted to look for something that's different, that hasn't been really seen, or like in an ordinary murder mystery game. Like, sure, there's a lot of elements from that murder mystery game that's already been seen, but I've taken some elements from different games and tried to put that into my own game. There, like as mentioned before, there's never an original idea. Everyone is going to have an idea, and it's probably spurred from something somewhere else. But don't, just because your game isn't you think it isn't unique, don't give up on it. That's really important. Like, try to do the best you can to make it a little different, or maybe completely different. But you'll never find out that if your game was a success if you gave up on it because you thought it was too original, or not too original, too it's copied off of something, or along those words. Alrighty. So we're gonna go to this next question. It's from the username Lexus. We'll just say Lexus. Yes. The question is, how do you properly start a plan for a game to ensure success?
So this question is a little bit vague. I'm going to assume it specifically means how do you ensure success in terms of completing the game? So ensuring a project will succeed depends on whether you're on a solo team or a team. If you're solo, you just need to manage your own productivity. Kind of use all the tips about motivation we talked about before. And it's also worth noting, I'm kind of going back to the previous question, but one thing you may want to do is actually ensure you're not being too productive. And that may sound weird, but the thing is, if you work a 16-hour day, or if you work overnight, that is not going to end well for your motivation. It may feel like you're Superman in the moment, but the next day when you're, sleeping until 4 p.m. and just want to watch Netflix all day, you're gonna be regretting it. So there's pretty much nobody on planet Earth who can, work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. So you want to make sure that while you're being productive, you want to it's more important to be consistently productive than to be randomly extremely productive. Because that's also just better for your life, actually, is just maintaining consistency in your sleep schedule and how much you're working. All right, so back to the ensuring a project will succeed. Another thing you can do is document your code. That will prevent so many mix-ups, and it will reduce the amount of time you spend trying to relearn your own code. You'd be shocked how long I spend just reading old code I did that hasn't yet been documented. So I would recommend, you don't necessarily need a tool for this. What I do is I just at the top of each script, I kind of write out a quick idea of what it does and all the different functions that are exposed. And I just kind of copy the layout that Roblox uses on the Dev Hub. And so I just kind of copy something similar to that. And that makes it very easy to understand immediately what a script is doing and how to utilize it. On a team, things are a bit different because not only do you need to manage your productivity, you need to manage their productivity. So in my opinion, communication is like the number one most important thing on a team. So like if someone hasn't done work in a week, that's bad. But it's even worse if you don't know that. So it's very important to have them constantly communicating. For Cloud Entertainment, everyone's in like an HQ Discord server, and we have I think semi-daily meetings. We have 3 meetings a week, and these meetings are literally just us reading off what we've done in the past couple of days. And honestly, most of the issues, well, not most, but a ton of the issues we've had have just come down to not communication that isn't good enough. And so we're always trying to encourage people to talk more. And then if they run into an issue, we've taught them to just go and type into the chat and say, hey, I have this problem. Does anyone know how I could fix it? And so for team, making sure everyone is, taking care of themselves will ensure that they stay motivated, and making sure everyone is communicating is important for making sure that you don't run into any mishaps, and you're able to keep track of what's happening a lot better.
Yeah, and everything he just said is going to make your life a whole lot easier. And so definitely focus on teamwork, focus on documenting code. All those are great tips. Though I do disagree though as to if that's the reason the game succeeds. I think those are the reason games come out, and that the reasons they're easy to maintain. And those are obviously very important reasons, but I guess I'm a living example of otherwise. I like Superhero Life 2 is a horribly made game. It is. Let me just go on a tangent for a second. This is a monstrosity. There is not a single module script in the entire game. Every other script is like 3,000 lines long, and not because they're all unique code. It's because I didn't know module scripts existed, so I just copy and pasted 3,000 line codes and then made tiny edits in these 3,000 line codes everywhere across the game. It's horrible. It's monstrous. It has been played over 100 million times. It hasn't been updated since arguably since 2018. There are currently 1,300 people in it. Like it's like that's like your game can defy every bit of logic for what a good, well-made game should be. Because at the end of the day, it's not about that. It's about if it's fun. And that is, to me, and so in making a game from the ground up, the most important thing to me is that you're making a fun game. A game that takes 10 years to come out. What'll matter is not that it took 10 years, but how it does once it's out. And how it does once it's out is almost entirely about whether or not it's fun. Like Stardew Valley is an excellent example. It's a game that took, I believe, 4 years, was made by a single person, Eric Barone. And he actually, there was a chapter about him in this book called Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, which I recommend reading if you're interested in game development. It's by Jason Schreier. And in that chapter, it talked about how he'd go back and redo entire sections of the game for weeks. And then there would be other periods where he wouldn't work for weeks. He'd log in and get nothing done and then just game for the entire day. But the thing is, he was dedicated to the core of the game, to making sure it was fun, to taking user feedback and improving that core experience. And even though it was his first time he'd ever made a game, he made all the assets. He coded it himself. Despite all that, the game was a success. He's a millionaire now. He doesn't have to work anymore. He doesn't have to do things on schedule. In fact, his game was so fun that they brought in other people to fix all his mistakes. It's a game which truly shows how, at the end of the day, it's not about how many years of training you have. It's not about how smart you are at programming. It's about whether or not people can enjoy your game. And for that, it's a very simple very simple thing. Start small. Make that core loop. Make the smallest possible game. No progression, no monetization, no fancy assets. Literally, take a week, make that fun core, and if it's and prove it's fun. Actually, like get numbers, like advertise it. See how long people play. See if any of them come back, and based on that, improve the game. Track player progression through the game. Figure out, like, are they always quitting when they get to this one part of the core loop? And if so, that's a problem. Figure out, do these people actually get to the fun part of the game, or do they get scared off in the onboarding? You can measure these things. You can figure them out from the get-go. And usually they will save or sync a game, and they can be done within the first 3 or 4 weeks. And they're fairly easy. Like installing analytics into your game can maybe take 3 or 4 days to figure out how to do it if you know nothing about it. And if you know anything about it, a few hours at worst. And so definitely just get like test from the start. Like that. That was something I heard every day at the internship. Test your game. Verify that it's fun. And because of that, typically at accelerator programs, the games that do well are the ones like the one when I was there in 2019. You know what the most successful game was? The most successful games from my memory? There was a Bad Business, which had a prototype fully functional and released and success. Like people were playing it within like the first 2 or 3 weeks. I watched them. They were just going. They were working hard, and they verified their game was fun. And because of that, it was a very successful game. Also, there are a few sequels that did well because, once again, like they knew what their audience wanted. They knew what won the last game. So having this information, which you can use to make your design decisions, is very important. And so, yeah, just play test from the very start. Know who your player is, and make sure it's fun for them. And yeah. Woo.
I think we've already covered good points. For playing out our game, some people have asked like what kinds of tools to use to plan things. I see that as like the second question as well. I highly recommend Trello. I know a lot of developers use that for planning their games. And then from there, you can both use it as like a tool of communicating with your team, as well as kind of organizing your ideas and your kind of roadmap for the game. And on your roadmap, you could decide like what core loop you're going to start with, and then like you can kind of build off of that idea and perhaps put it in a different list on a different priority. And I think that's a really good tool for planning out your game.
So for me, ironically, I don't really use Trello. Like I've suggested it, but I don't really use it. What I do usually is if I want to create a game, I create a simple Google Doc and I list down everything I want. I'm like for example, I'm actually working on a like racing game, trying to make it as fun as possible. So like back in April, I would say, I had this 8-page document filled with like everything. I'm like, all right, this currency needs to be like, common to get. Or like, oh, this other currency, I got to make it a little harder to get. Maybe sometimes you have to pay for it. Or like this list of characters, I'm like, oh, got to describe what I really want from them. So like, it just depends on like what type of person you are. For me, like I tried Trello, but it's really hard for me to get back into it and be like, oh, I did this, check mark. Oh, I did this, check mark. No, like I prefer like if I have the Google Doc and I have like different sections I've listed off, like, all right, I need to do this, 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 and I just continue from there. And sometimes, this is not recommended, by the way, sometimes I just scratch both of them and just make it. I'll just do it. So I do the complete opposite. Don't look at me. Chase, CJ, do you have anything to say about like that question?
Sure. I've used every major planning tool on the face of the earth. I literally spent a week just trying out like 12 to 13 different like planning tools. Most of them were just lesser versions of the big ones, such as Trello and Jira and Hack and Plan. A Hack and Plan is the one I used for the longest. But to me, the biggest criteria is you need to be able to track, you need to be able to estimate how long a task is going to take, and then actually be able to record how long it took you, because that is very important for actually figuring out how you're doing and estimate like when things are going to get done. And that's just a good habit to get into. But in terms of just purely designing your dream game, Miro. There's this tool called Miro. It's free to use. For like the first 3 planning maps, and I use a paid version for like I think 5 or 10, and it's great. I use it all the time. It allows for you to easily make flowcharts. I make mind maps a lot, like all of these different applications for it, because it's just your brain thinks of things, these little objects, these little clumps. Like you'll come up with an idea and you want to connect it to these things. And so why not just literally like make a little like post-it note and literally just like draw a line to the thing. Like I have a whiteboard behind me because it's a lot easier to actually visualize stuff just freehand. You don't need to have a whole document to maintain. You don't, because I had a 130-page document for Mortal Metal in my 2019 internship. So like I was fully with you on like just document everything. But it ended up becoming so big that I couldn't maintain it. And like so I would suggest either keeping it small or just mind map. Keep it visual. Keep it loose, because and then when you get to a specific area, that's when you flesh it out. Don't do what I did and like write up so many things before you'd even touch the engine. Like just definitely that you can over plan for a game, and just figure out what your core loop is. Figure out maybe a basic progression system, and then just go from there. Just run.
Wait, so if we are, so we're currently on the question about planning tools, right? Okay, so I saw someone mention ClickUp, and the Cloud Entertainment uses ClickUp actually, and it sucks. I don't know. Maybe everyone else disagrees with me, but I think we pay, is it like $300 a user a year? And honestly, it is incredibly laggy and it's clunky, and I do not like it. I don't know. I didn't choose ClickUp. Okay. I think we use it because tracking time is pretty good on it. But I would say you really don't need to go with a specific software or program. You can literally make it work with an Excel spreadsheet if you wanted to. Personally, for my own project, I like Trello. It's fine.
Just use Google
Sheets. Just Google Sheets. So it's free. You can plan out tasks very quickly if you want to, and just I don't know, Google Sheets. Just want to throw it out there. Nothing wrong with using it.
Just use Google Docs. It's free. The next question. Well, there's 2 questions, but they're really similar to each other. It comes from RBLX, which is Roblox. How do you get your game to the audience it's targeted for? And it comes from also Yellow Banana 898, which is how do you reach a large audience for your game with no marketing budget? Say those are similar.
So I'll start with Yellow's question because it kind of leads into Na's question afterwards. If you want to reach an audience with no marketing budget, what you can do is make up for the lack of cash with by actually spending time working on it. So, for example, probably in my head I have like 2 main ways that I know of to get attention. And the first one is very simple. It's Twitter. Just have an account for the project and tweet out work in progresses, ideally screenshots and GIFs semi-regularly, and use the Roblox dev hashtag. If you have a personal Twitter, you can retweet it on there. And that will lead people who are interested to follow the account to see when the game goes live. And the second way is through influencers. A lot of people think you need to get a sponsorship that costs thousands of dollars in order to get an influencer to utter your name. But these influencers are oftentimes, it's a little trick. Influencers are very vain. And if you say, hey, I will put you in I'll put you in my game, or like give your audience some kind of code. All you have to do is shout it out on, on Twitter or something. They will often more than likely be able to do that because it's fun for them. I mean, who doesn't want to have, who doesn't want to be in their own game? So just kind of doing stuff like reaching out to influencers. They almost always have a business email in their in their Twitter bio or on their YouTube channel's about page. And from there, you can shoot them an email, say, hey, I would like to, put in a little special thing in my game for you. And let me know if something sounds good or what you might like. And as for like getting a specific targeted audience, I really like that question. And unfortunately with sponsorships, the normal way of just going to Roblox and sponsoring your game, your options are kind of limited. They're improving by starting to add targeted ad features. So it's somewhat of an improvement there. But you really can't narrow in beyond gender. And I think there's some age settings. I might be wrong about that. So that can definitely help. And if you want to narrow it down further, what you can do is change your game's icon to something that is more likely to resonate with the specific audience you're going for. Can't really think of an example. It's like a simple, you're probably already doing this because like, oh, I want people who are interested in Western games. So you have a Western game icon, it's kind of obvious. But as I would also recommend again, using Twitter, because, people will follow other people who post stuff they're interested in. And there's this network of people who are interested in the kind of thing that you're making. So you just need to, reach out to them through Twitter. And also you can pick out specific influencers who, might be creating videos for a specific demographic that you're interested in. For example, the audience that watches Remainings is probably a different audience from, Dan TDM. So, picking and choosing which influencers you talk to could definitely help a lot. Also, I should note that I was not trying to be rude by saying influencers are vain. The joke is that I have a YouTube channel, so I'm just as vain.
Canceled. But everything he said is correct. All those things can really help you out, especially with maximizing existing games. Like influencers can bring in a ton of people. But what I would really love to focus on is actually kind of in against the question. I know you said like with no marketing budget, and I guess I would like to just say that you could literally get your game onto the front page with $5. Like let me explain. So what I'm going to post here in the chat is a little spreadsheet. I call it the player acquisition calculator. And it shows how with a Roblox budget of 400 Robux, a percent profit reinvested of 70% rate, an average revenue per user of 1.91, average play duration of 15 minutes, day one retention of 40%, day 7%, retention of 20%, month one retention of 5%. And by the way, these retention rates mean a month later, 5% of people will return if your month one retention rate is 5%. And then click-through rate of 50%, click-to-play rate. So that means once they've clicked your game, if they actually play it, I put that 50%. Some people have reported around 70, but I'm putting 50% for now. And then the ad click-through rate. And so all of this stuff shows that even with the most basic, smallest amount of budget, by simply earning more from your game, from the players that enter it, and then reinvesting it, you can you can just continue to grow your advertising budget and continue to grow your game until you've reached the advertising cap, which in this case with these variables seems to be around 600 concurrent players. And so you can hit, and then with that, once you hit the cap here, obviously it does level off. This is where you go to influencers. This is where you really get trying to maximize every bit of every click, you really try to double down on all that stuff. But for this, like, you really just need $5. And like, I'm not saying that everyone has equal access to money, but if you can afford to make games for a living, like you have a computer, you have internet, like you can find $5. I'm not saying it's equal, but like $5, if that's the minimum needed to make a game do well, that's reachable. The difficulty here is the design aspect, the actually proving that your game can hit these numbers, because these metrics, while they are standard for a successful game, they're not standard for your first game. like these are definitely like professional, like people who've been doing this for a while and know what they're doing. So that's why I believe game design is so important to study, because that's how you get to these metrics. That's how you can know that the game you make will succeed, even though you don't have a massive AAA budget. Like and so yeah, this kind of stuff is very useful. I fully recommend it. Also, on that same spreadsheet, there's a second sheet connected called the calculator, where you can just, by the way, make a copy of this so you can edit it, so you can mess around with it. You can make a copy of a file, make a copy. And you can, and in any of the yellow, if it's highlighted in yellow, that means you're supposed to change it. You're supposed to mess around with it. The text, those are custom number formats, so don't worry, but you don't have to type them in after. And so on the calculator page, you can just really put in the desired concurrent player count, because some games, admittedly, you need a certain number of players in them to have fun. So if you start with, like, if you use a 10 Robux advertising budget and there's only ever one person in a server and your game needs 2 to start, well, that's not going to work out. So definitely double down on making sure that you're creating that ideal game experience in what you're advertising. But as I said, $5 with 50% average play, that'll get you 18 players. Like that'll get you 18 concurrents, and that's across the entire day. And since time zones are thing, and most of your audience probably isn't equally distributed across the world, you'll see higher levels during the day. And yeah, so like that's the thing. Like you can get your game going. It's just if you advertised your game and it is not currently at like 600 or 700 concurrents, then that's a game design problem. That's not a marketing problem. So you could probably market a bad game to that level of success. But in my opinion, it's much easier just to get the game right, and then just and much more affordable. And so yeah, so that's my recommendation on this. Hope this tool helps you out. It's helped me out a ton. Yeah.
Does Wooly have anything for this one?
CJ and Chase like just took all my, no, I'm joking. Like for my murder mystery game and like the racing game I haven't planned, I'm hoping to probably advertise it and like try to get influencers to actually play it to help grow it, but not just to say that, like, if you don't have the budget for it, don't be demotivated. Some people don't have the budget for it, yet they'd still succeed in it. It may be a bit harder to get your game out there, but as said, there's free tools like Twitter. There's this thing called email where you can email the influencers you want to get. So if you just try to get your game out there, sure, it may be hard without advertisement, but it's not impossible. That's like pretty much what I wanted to say. But it's preferred if you advertise it, but it's not impossible.
One final note to add is something I should have said when I was talking about creating a Twitter account specifically for your game, is that you want to do it for the long haul. You want to make sure you're creating tweets like long before the game is out, because the larger a wealth of content and the longer you're putting it out for, the larger an audience you're going to get for that launch date.
Alrighty, we're going to go on to the next question. It's from Parallel Mayhem. His question is, how viable is it to make a living off of Roblox? Is it something I should try to do, or am I wasting my time trying to achieve that? Question mark, question mark.
Well, I think it is totally viable to make a living off of Roblox, since I know quite a few people who have done it. As for, is it something you should try to do? I mean, it's totally something you should try to do because it's awesome once you're able to get there. But it's also worth considering that you shouldn't try in the sense that you should like quit your job and dive face first into it without having a successful game. I would say until you have like a certain level of income that you're sure you can keep consistent like throughout several months, I would not quit your job immediately. And I think it's totally possible to just try and then come up with an existing game. There's no secret formula. It's really just using, all of the different things we've been talking about today, and then all these, best practices and whatnot, and combining them into one main project. I mean, to be completely honest, I've never really done that. I just kind of do whatever what I find interesting, and I joined Fishing Simulator after it was popular. But it is totally possible to go in with the intent to make a successful game and make a successful game like possibly even on your first go. But it's worth considering that it requires a ton of forethought and a ton of work put into it. And so, but yeah, you're not wasting your time if you enjoy doing it, and you can definitely it's just definitely you're definitely going to be able to accomplish that if you really like approach it from the correct angle. I don't know if I was coherent in that last sentence. Whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, this is a great question because it's one I myself asked about almost I guess 6 months ago. Yeah, I've been doing full-time Roblox development right out of college. So yeah, one day my family may understand what that means, but no. But it all comes down to how much do you really want it, and are you making the bare minimum needed to survive? Because it's a very simple equation. Like earnings versus expenses, and how much does it cost to keep you alive, keep you surviving, able to dev? Like if you split an apartment with someone and split your food bill, cook only at home, never go out to eat to restaurants, all of that stuff. It's like you can make it. Like you can live off of a fairly small amount of money. Like it's just, do you want to do that? Like that's the question, because I can't tell you that you should do that. I'm not sure I would have if I was like, well, I'm going to have to live on the streets and then design my games from the local library, which as COVID happened, I guess definitely would not have been a good plan. But like, yeah, that's the point, is like, you can do it. It's just, how much is it worth it? Like, because at that point, I'm not sure it'd be worth it. Like at that point, get a job at a fast food place. There's I know many developers, especially indie devs, subsidize their existence with a part-time job. I know, in fact, Eric Byrne, the guy who made Stardew Valley earlier, he worked at a movie theater. Part of it was the money. Part of it was just to keep himself semi-social and not like too much of a hermit. So like, there's like, you don't have to go fully game dev. There's a whole bunch of things to consider, whole ass spreadsheets you can make. Personally, I have been fortunate that I can pretty much live at the same standard I was in college. So eating out every once in a while, a lot of ramen, an apartment that looks like it was made in the 50s or 60s. It's probably a little bit haunted. But yeah, it's like, you can make it work. And I wanted to make it work because I genuinely love my job. Like, it started out as a hobby. Like, you can't get any better than that. And I set my own hours. I get to make whatever I want. I have a community of people who support me and love the stuff I make. Like, you think I'm going to get that working at McDonald's? No. No, I'm not going to get that. Like, this is my dream job, and I'm getting to experience it firsthand, and it's great. So, yeah, go for it if you can. But once again, like, it's going to be different for every person as to whether or not that is worth it. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I agree. It's like, if you can start something, then yeah. But otherwise, you can always kind of pad it with like a part-time job or something like that.
Yeah, I would just say make sure you know 100% that like Roblox will be a viable like job, because you don't want to be like, all right, I got a game, it's going, and then like the next day you quit your job and do everything, and then like something unfortunate happens with your game. You want to make sure that you're 100% sure that you're able to make a living off of it. So make sure you know like your stuff, like with like your expenses as mentioned, uh, how many things you buy, depending on your lifestyle. Just make sure you know like what that you're 100% sure that you're gonna like just depend on Roblox as your living. So that's all I have. I can't really answer it too much because I haven't really had much experience with depending on Roblox for my life. So so we are gonna go to the next question.
On that note, there are a few of these that are in the same vein, and I know since I know that we, and me especially, love answering in immense amounts of detail. We have covered some of these areas, even if that wasn't apparent. So we're going to go through and probably dismiss a few of them, and that's not diss. We're just trying to keep things as I guess fresh as possible. So if you feel that either we dismissed it wrongfully or that there's an area that you'd like to focus on, definitely re-enter the question. But we're going to go through and probably trim some of the areas that we've talked about. All right.
Yep, I am trying to find something.
Cool.
There's like a bunch of them that are like similar to the ones we've discussed. So hold on.
Well, at the top is a question for CJ, so I can answer that while y'all are figuring that out if you want.
Go ahead.
I mean, unless someone else wants to answer.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Now for my favorite topic, myself. How did I get into Roblox? There's actually a documentary I could give you that explains this. But anyway, so I was 8. No, I was 10. It was 2008, but I was 10. And my dad knew I loved Legos, and he was like, "Hey, virtual Legos. Now we don't have to buy them for you as often." That was not the case, but I did get into Roblox. First time I made a game, all fell apart. I said, "I hate this. Never gonna do this again." My game fell apart. But well, obviously that a 10-year-old promise did not stick. And yeah, so then as to get the job, so there, I guess. So I'm just a free, like I'm a freelance, I guess. Like I work on my, like I own my own company. I'm my own person. So I didn't have to take an exam to get it, unless you count like finishing school, and that wasn't even necessary. So in terms of like internship stuff, that was multiple interviews. And back when I first got in, it was a lot easier, honestly. Like I did one interview, and I didn't even have to show much. My pitch was kind of lame, but I didn't even have to give a pitch until I was there. Like they just let you in based on fully on your success and merit at that point, and a single conversation. And obviously, in 2019, it was there were literally like 8. I had to give 8 interviews. Because they kept saying like, I like this part of the game, but let's change it a bit and rebuild the demo and pitch it to me again next week. And that was also during college, so I was like having to juggle so much work, and it was not a fun experience. But it worked out, and I got in for a second time. Yeah, and like third time, it was even harder. There was like literally, I think, almost 1,000 applications. Like it was like I got to the final round, but at the end of the day, my team didn't have enough new people in it because they want you to bring in new people into it. They don't want to just keep on bringing the same old faces back. Though having an old face on your team helps because they'll trust them a little bit more, but like they don't want to all be just keep bringing back because they know I know how to make a game. They're not going to train me again. They're done with me, at least alone. And so, yeah, definitely. Definitely all that stuff is definitely go for it. Try to get into that program. It's a great program. It's a long walk to get there, but apply because your first application might not succeed, but second one might.
Yeah, I'm actually applying this summer, so wish me luck. But try your best. Like, don't give up. Like, if you are gonna compare yourself to like other developers and be like, oh, I'm not gonna be as good as them. There's no way they'll take no. Don't go into that mindset. Be the best you can be, motivate yourself, and try and just show that you care, you're motivated, you're dedicated. If you can show that to Roblox, then they're going to take you. If you're gonna just give up because people are like, well, there's other people, then it won't work out. So I don't know if anyone else has any more comments. No? Okay. So I've left out 2 more questions since we're getting close to the time. This question comes from Game Dev Sky. His question is, when you're a developer that doesn't know, for instance, building and modeling, and you want to make a game with these builds and models, and they are necessary to do so, and putting in placeholders is just not working, what should we do?
Are you gonna go? Okay. So I would say that I'm not really sure in what circumstance placeholders wouldn't really work, because the idea behind a placeholder is just the minimum viable product to make the programming aspect of things work. But if this is like if you're talking about like animations and stuff, then I think honestly your best bet is just trying to do it yourself and trying to learn it. If you have the money for it, you can hire someone who knows what they're doing. You can hire an animator, or you can hire someone who does modeling. But honestly, I'm pretty sure when it comes to programming, you should, with a little bit of effort, be able to make pretty much any kind of placeholder you can need, even if you don't know very much about building and modeling.
Yeah, no, for sure, definitely. There's a very low like bar to entry to get the minimum of what you need for these kind of things. But even then, like I guess 2 things. First one, want to reiterate, yeah, that like using prefabs and model and free models and all that stuff, that's perfectly fine. I mean, and in fact, a game engine in a sense is a free model. It's like you're just reusing a bunch of code. Like reusing coding libraries is fine. Using free assets in your game is fine. It's just all about what it does to the experience. Because I would say if you are not comfortable with building and models and aesthetics, well, you gotta design your game with that in mind. Like that's always been the case. Like I could say, I want to make GTA 6. Well, for one, I don't own the rights to it. 2, I'm not a 100-person team willing to crunch for the rest of my life. And like 3, I particularly, I'm not sure I have really the reach for that. Like I wouldn't be able to distribute it. I don't know any publishers, and I don't think Roblox could run GTA 6. Like it's like there are all these different things that like you have to consider, these constraints, and they suck, but you have to work within them. And if a constraint for you is I can't make this, then that just means your design needs to change. Like if you are not good at map making, like don't make a game that's like fully based, like the experience fully comes from the environmental atmosphere. So like no role playing games, no role playing games for you. You keep that market all for myself. No, but even then, like even like if you've played my games, you'll know they aren't that pretty either. So like you can make up for it in other areas, but I was able to make a custom character generator thing, which helped me a lot. If it was just based on my maps quality, my game would not be succeeding. So like figure out what's important to your game and make sure it's something you're good at. And yeah, because like it'll be miserable if you're stuck trying to prop up your game on your weakest ability. And yeah, I mean, like everyone's good at something. Not everyone's going to be equally skilled at because everyone's at different points in their life, different points of their journey. I'm 23. Like when I was like, as far as I can tell, I think I'm the oldest person in this call, and everyone here is very talented, and they're a lot more talented than I was when I was their age. But like it's like all these different things. Like you don't have to make a game that CJ can make. You don't have to make a game that WooleyWool can make. You don't have you got to make a game that Game Dev Sky can make. Like and that's fine. That's how you grow. It doesn't got to be a front page game. Like you just make it, learn from it, and your next game will be better. I've made 100 games literally, and because of that, I now get to talk about game making, which is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of building off of the question regarding assets, you can either learn how to do things yourself, or you can hire people who know what they're doing, and you can get that kind of team together. And as long as you're communicating, you'll get things done.
Yeah. When I'm creating the stuff that I need for my game, I literally take a part. I'll make it a 5x5x5 part, and then I will just code it. Like, I do not worry about the models or anything until I really need to. What my best suggestion is wait until you know for a fact what you need done. So if you're going to hire someone for modeling, wait until you are at the point where, all right, I got my game scripted. Now I actually need to get this, like, these things built. So just contacting others to help you out will be really beneficial. Or you could just be me and use blocks. It's really fun. So, all right, we will go to the next question. The next question is from Developer. I hope I said that right. What is your view on Roblox's future? Will it keep on growing or decline at a certain point? Would you be able to generate a long-term income or short-term? We got to the second part. We discussed about that, kinda. I don't know if anyone wants to add on to it, but I believe the first part we haven't really talked about that much.
So first off, let's just say that everything does have a peak. But what I will say is that what is more important than the peak of something is its foundation. And it's taken Roblox a decade and a half to get to the point it's at now. And so hopefully that extremely slow and steady growth we had in that first decade is going to mean that the decline is similarly slow and, and stretched out. So I don't see Roblox like dropping off the map in, like 5 years or something, just completely evaporating. And even if it does like eventually start declining, which I mean, I think eventually it will, even when it eventually starts declining, it's not going to be like, well, time to abandon ship. We lost 1,000 monthly active players. It's time to, get out of here. There's no saving it. In reality, I think it's not necessarily going to be like that, because even if something, even if Roblox starts to decline, it's gone like here. So even if it does this for the rest of the time, you still got all that time. These are still like hundreds of millions of, active monthly users. And so it's still a very good thing. On the internet, we're kind of used to seeing exponential growth. And if it's not exponentially growing, it's basically dead at this point, right? So, but no, I can see Roblox probably continuing to grow for a good long while. And even once it's hit its peak, I can see itself sustaining itself for many years to come.
Oh, yeah. No, I think that Roblox is definitely in a much better place, especially with the whole IPO thing opening up, because I think that'll legitimize it a lot as an actual platform to do things, much more like a YouTube and less like a Minecraft. And but yeah, I mean, like what Chipio says is true. The time it very rarely leaves something unscathed. Like, but I also let's also appreciate for a second though that like in a sense, changing a company changing is also a form of decline. Like, remember what Roblox used to be? It was a physics sandbox where people were like said "oof" a lot or something. Like, I guess that last part's still true, but like it was a very different thing. And in a sense, in the birth of this current Roblox, which I very much like, that old Roblox declined and probably doesn't really exist as much. It's not really known for being a physics sandbox. It's a games platform. And that's fine. Like that's the thing. Like the Roman Empire, it did decline, but in its ashes, also the Byzantine Empire rose up. And then when the Byzantine Empire declined, the Turkish Empire rose up. And it's just like the you keep on like having these like Phoenix type moments where when one thing isn't working out, the things change direction, and you can continue to adapt to them. And that's been the case for every institution that's lasted more than a split second. And yeah, so it's yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I think Roblox will be fun. I'm not sure if it'll look anything like what we know today a decade from now, but it's not going to be deleted. Let's say that Roblox goes bankrupt. I don't think it will, but its technology won't just be like erased. It'll be acquired by someone else, and then they'll make it. They'll continue to push that vision. And I'm not sure that'll happen because do companies this big really even fail anymore? I know too big to fail is like a big, like ominous phrase, but like it exists for a reason because companies this big don't fail that often. And because they get bailed out. But that's a different thing we don't need to talk about. All right. But anyway, yeah, so Roblox is doing fine right now. It's doing great. It's the best time ever to join the platform. Don't worry about it. I guess the only thing that I can really add to that is don't spend all your savings on Roblox stock. Diversify it, but that's just general economic advice. Anyway, yeah.
I think Roblox is going to continue to grow for a significantly long time, especially with like recent like the developments such as the going public and the AI avatar they've just acquired. And yeah, I just see them growing for a very long time. I don't think they will just disappear off the planet like that.
Agree. I don't think they're gonna go anywhere for quite a time. It'd be kind of weird if they just, disappeared. It wouldn't make sense. And I doubt that, especially with a lot of the things that they're trying to aim for. Like with all of the RDCs that I've seen, they are working. Like, we're gonna add this. Literally like months later, they just added. They're not gonna just stop. They've worked really hard on adding in new things. And as like Hypen has mentioned, like with the Roblox going public, it just shows that like Roblox is continuing to grow. It wouldn't really make much sense for it to just die off for like in like the next years. I would not be seeing it going away for quite some time. Let's go on to the next question. I just want to apologize. Simply, I'm so sorry if I like got rid of your question with the question, is it worth making a sequel to the game? I like when Chip.io brought it back up, I was like, oh, this probably is a good question. I'm so sorry if I got rid of it. So the question is it worth making a sequel to the game? I apologize. Don't kill me, please.
So I would say it is worth making a sequel to a game if there's something you think would drastically improve the game that would truly make it an entirely different experience. So I know I'm kind of planning a sequel to one of my older games because the original game is just an obstacle course, but the new one would, I'm not going to spoil it, but it's essentially becoming a completely different game. And so I would say if the game is basically getting completely changed, or if you would like to, the alternative is if it's just like a really old game or something, then it might be worth doing that, so you don't have to build it on like a really bad foundation or something. But there are also examples of games that don't need sequels. I know story games need sequels, which is why you still get COD sequels, is because they throw in these story missions that honestly aren't very good. And I had one more thing to say. Oh yeah. Look at Madden games. If you want to see an example of why not to do sequels, play literally any two Madden games back to back. They're essentially copy pasted, and then the only difference is the players, because that's why people buy them, is so they can pretend to be managing their favorite team, I guess. That's all.
Yeah, for sure. And as I'm currently working on Superhero Life 4, I do have some opinions on this. Yeah, so it's sequels versus taking your game and just continuing to update it. Obviously, you've seen both ways, to the point where like people were joking for a while, like, if Roblox is so good, how come there's no Roblox 2? So like that kind of stuff is obviously like that really takes to the point of it. Like there are benefits to taking the same thing and just continuing to build it, and there are benefits to make it something new. And I think when it comes down to it is, what have people invested into the original game? if they have spent years of their life building up wealth in your game, they might not jump over. So you may consider either having like a transfer their resources over option, but in those instances, typically it's easier just to keep updating that main game. But the problem is, if you have a big idea, like I'm going to change this game and I'm going to make it better, people are going to be blown away. What if they aren't? Like, what if they hate it? Here's the thing: Superhero Life 2, success. Superhero Life 1, success. Superhero Life 3, success with asterisks, because it succeeded financially, but it still gets about like a fifth amount of people who play Superhero Life 2. It had better monetization, so it actually sometimes out-earns Superhero Life 2 despite having a fifth as many people. It's just all of these things are so obviously important to consider, because you don't want to necessarily lose your entire audience, but you also don't want to you don't want to accidentally kill the cash cow you have. Like I would not be able to do a full-time development if Superhero Life 2 was wiped out by an idiotic mistake I made in designing Superhero Life 3. Like that's the reality. And yeah, you could revert it, but then also you lose the opportunity to work on something new. So I think I prefer sequels most of the time. But that doesn't mean you should always jump ship the second you have a new idea for your game. But I don't know, just be mindful. Don't make any decisions quickly. See what your community thinks of it, because oftentimes the first people to ask for a sequel will be the community. Like they'll be like, "Hey, when's insert game name 2 coming out?" Yeah. So that's that's my take on it. Superhero Life 4 is going to be great. I hope I don't ever have to make a Superhero Life 5. I want last one. Come on. Made too many of them. Idea's done.
He's begging. Just do what he asks. All right. Well, I'll go then. To me, it really just depends on what type of game it is. I remember when I was like, I don't know, 7 years old, I used to play a lot of Super Mario Galaxy. Some of you are like looking at me like, "Ooh, yes." And like that kind of game was a story as well as with adventure to it. And like when I heard Super Mario Galaxy 2 was coming out, oh, icing on the cake. But it just depends on your game. I feel that if your game is a story game, of course it's going to need a sequel, because there's probably going to be like a bunch of questions that people are going to be like, it's like, what's going to happen to this person, you know? Or like, what's going to happen next? So like adding these sequels in, it helps grow the story. But like it just really depends on your game. If your game doesn't really have like that sequel feel that would be coming along, maybe just the bigger update might help out. It just really depends in the case.
It does depend, and like sometimes when you do create that sequel, you're probably going to know like what your audience wants as kind of like your starting point for your new game. And then in the new game, you're probably also going to have much more optimized code. And now that you've actually had the experience of creating the first one, now you know like what works, what doesn't, and how to kind of structure your new game around that. And I think sequels are a good idea if you can pull your audience in for that new remake.
Absolutely. And now we're going to be going to our last question. The question comes from Brant P, 1996. This question ties in a little more with scripting, but it just shows our our ideas of how we're going to achieve this. But his question is, how would you guys tackle those? I just got free Robux from some random site, or from their accounts as well. Any tips on how to get rid of that? Yeah. Good.
Okay, so for Fishing Frontier, we have an idea we think is going to work really well. I'm not going to unveil too much about it, but basically, a great way to take care of bots is exploit the fact that it is the same bot running for tons of different games. So what you can do is come up with something specific to your game that the bot would have to do in order to gain chatting privileges. So, for example, in our game, you'd have to we don't actually require them to do this, but like maybe they'd have to catch a fish before they can send any messages in chat. So having features like that will make it so they're just literally not even able to chat, and it doesn't necessarily affect the player because, you know, catching a fish is easy for them. That's part of the game. They should have already done that as soon as they joined. And so they just it's basically like a CAPTCHA that the player doesn't even notice if they're an actual player. So I would recommend doing something specific to your game that the bot would have to accomplish first. Yeah, in-game CAPTCHAs do not work. I mean, web CAPTCHAs don't work, obviously. So
neural network away from CAPTCHA just being annihilated from the internet.
Agreed. It's mean whenever I try to log in. One way I am planning to think, it's not going to be the only way, believe me, I got a lot of things planned. One way I'm going to make sure that it's prevented is I'm going to be looking at what has been said by bots. I'm going to look at what they've said, because there's always a similar pattern. They're going to be like, oh, hey guys, did you know I got this from this site? Oh, those links don't work. Use this. Well, I'll be looking at those, look for a pattern, and add in some filtering to the game to prevent it. And I got other ideas. They're a lot meaner and fun, but it'll get to the point. It'll get rid of it easily. Evil ways.
That actually reminds me. I might have accidentally subverted the entire bot community with my. So Superhero Life 2 has a lobby place, and I don't think the bots know to click the play button. I think that's it. They show up there and they talk in a place where no one can read messages, and I guess since they're all automated and they just have like a press play button on the site all figured out, that's how it works. So it's like that, like just a simple like buffer will make it so that they have to like code a custom response to yours or man every bot, and that's just not going to be worth it unless you're like the biggest game on Roblox. So like I don't think it should matter all too much. But obviously Roblox is also trying to attack this issue, so hopefully they've got a solution that's better than anything we can provide. But yeah, is that a final question, or what's happening?
That's pretty much it from what we had. I would just like to say thank you everyone for coming. I want to give like a big shout out to these 3 awesome people. Like I would not have been like at this point without these people's help. Like they've helped guide me through, oh, how should we do this? How should we do that? Which will help me a ton in my future events. I'd also like to thank the audience for signing up and coming, because like, wow, I haven't seen the chat yet. So whatever you say, I'm going to be looking soon, but, oh, I can't wait to read it. It's going to be interesting. This event is recorded as well. I will be taking care of uploading and everything. Chase is helping out as well in case of any discrepancies that happen between our recordings. But other than that, thank you. Keep your eyes peeled for other events, because there's a lot more being planned right now from other people. So thank you so much.
For sure. Yeah, thank you everyone. And also, if you have any questions, I know that I personally can be reached on the dev forum for if you feel free to DM me and just be like, hey, my game is not working for this please help. And I'm happy to give you my 2 cents.
Yep, I'll be on the forums too. If you have anything crazy, I'll help you guide through the problem. I won't directly give you the like solution just because I want you to learn to do it, but I'll be there to help you.
Same here. I'm pretty available.
So, thank you so much, everyone. I will be on here doing my things and updating everything. So, thank you.
All right. See you, everyone.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Have a nice weekend.
Yep. Happy developing.
Event for all.
Love it.
Oh, people are asking.
Did it happen? What? Oh no.
Can we get some spaghetti emotes in chat?
I pressed end event for all, so I don't know how that worked. Oh, well, now it's just me and you. Oh. I don't like this. All right. Hey, Welcome to the CJ Show. Get a copy of the recording.